Ridiculous, you say this is your bank? Look at me. Are you stupid enough to believe you? Get out of here.
Fluorescents hum. Phones rise. The teller flags manager override. The manager strides in, waving 2 checks like evidence. "Fake checks again?" he shouts, loud enough for the lobby. Security edges closer, thumb near the radio. The woman in a beige suit doesn't blink. She slides an ID card and a thin portfolio under the glass. Taps the speaker. Verify the account. He scoffs, starting to crease the checks. She leans in, voice even. "Stop. Approve the withdrawal." A beat, because I own this bank. Silence. Every camera keeps rolling. The bank feels colder than outside. Fluorescent lights hum over a midday queue, and the glass at the counter reflects a row of raised phones. The woman in the beige suit stands at the teller window with a calm that unsettles the chatter behind her. She places an ID card and a withdrawal slip on the tray. The teller scans, swallows, and taps a key for manager override. A tiny red light blinks like a warning beacon. The manager arrives with the energy of someone who believes volume is the same as authority. Vest tight, name tag straight, he picks up 2 checks and holds them high so the lobby can see. His voice travels to every corner. "Fake checks again." He says it like a headline, like a verdict delivered before the trial starts. People in line tilt forward. A boy on a scooter holds his breath. The security guard steps in, not blocking anyone yet, just adjusting where he stands so everyone feels his presence. The woman does not flinch. Her eyes track the manager only once, then return to the teller. She opens a slim portfolio and slides a single document into view. A neat page whose seals and signatures speak for themselves. "Verify the account," she says. Her tone is low and even, the kind of voice that makes the air stop moving. The teller glances at the manager as if asking permission to obey a reasonable request. "Policy?" the manager replies, like it is a shield. He leans closer to the glass, the checks still lifted like props. "Endorsements look off," he says. "The signatures do not match." He begins to crease a corner of one check, as if to show its weakness. A murmur runs through the bystanders. Someone whispers that they have seen a video like this before. The phones angle higher. The guard shifts his weight again and lightly touches the microphone on his shoulder. The woman taps the speaker button on the counter. There is a soft click that the microphones on those phones will pick up later. "Call your regional director," she says. Her gaze does not leave the manager. "If you do not want to make the call, hand the phone to the teller." She gives the teller a small nod that is more reassuring than any apology. The teller looks grateful for a fraction of a second and then hides it behind training. The manager laughs without humor. "I have enough authority to refuse," he says, and the refusal is shaped like a threat. He keeps performing for the room, collecting witnesses he thinks are on his side. He raises 1 check to the light. He taps another against the glass. He repeats the word fake as if repetition will write it into the system. The woman closes the portfolio with a quiet thud that somehow carries. She places her fingertips on the counter. Every move is economical. She is not trying to win the room. She is giving the bank a chance to do its own job. "Approve the withdrawal," she says. The guard hears the choice in those 4 words. The teller hears a way out. The manager hears a challenge. He still refuses to call. A camera shutter chirps. Another phone goes live. In the reflection of the glass, the woman sees herself and the crowd and the little red light still blinking between policy and practice. She leans in just enough to be heard by everyone without raising her voice. "Stop. Approve the withdrawal." Then, with the same steady tone, she adds the line that changes the temperature of the room. "Because I own this bank." Sound falls away. The manager blinks. The teller's hand hovers above the keyboard, ready to type, afraid to move. The security guard lowers his palm from the radio and studies the woman's ID, again noticing what he missed the first time. A customer near the back whispers, "Wow," then clamps a hand over their mouth like they just interrupted a prayer. The moment stretches. Logic begins to return to the space. Behind the glass, the teller's screen still waits for a decision. In that pause, the woman does not fill the silence. She lets the institution decide what it wants to be on camera. The next actions will tell everyone who is actually in control here. The room exhales, then inhales again as if the entire branch is deciding whether to argue or to listen. The manager recovers first. He squares his shoulders, draws a breath meant to reclaim authority, and speaks to the teller instead of to her. "Do not proceed until I clear it." His eyes flick to the cameras and he pastes on a measured smile, the kind used in training videos. "We appreciate your patience," he tells the crowd, as if the crowd asked for a show. The woman does not move from the counter. She lifts the portfolio and sets out a short stack of documents with deliberate spacing, each page angled so the teller can read without touching. Certificate of incorporation, board resolution, control person verification, a signature card for the very account in question. If you prefer, verify via the internal directory. Look up the holding company, then confirm the ownership chain. Her cadence is patient rather than forgiving. Security stands a step back, finally speaking. "Manager, we can place a call to the regional director's office while you review. The suggestion is neutral. It sounds like a procedure." The guard does not look at the phones or the crowd. He watches the woman's hands and the manager's breathing, trying to predict which way this will go. The teller leans toward the screen. Their fingers hover, then decide. They open the internal contact list, type the holding company name, and stop. There it is, a record with the woman's surname, twice. Once as chair, once as beneficial owner. The teller's eyes widen a degree. They look at the manager and, carefully, at the woman. "I am seeing a match." The manager waves a dismissive palm, not ready to surrender the narrative. Directory entries can be wrong. He asks for a second form of identification, as if the pile of evidence were a trick of light. The woman offers a second ID, then an access badge that the camera angles catch like a confession. She does not push it forward dramatically. She sets it down in the space between all of them. An invitation to step into reality. "You can phone the director," she says, "or your compliance lead. If you refuse to verify, note that refusal on the record." The phrasing is surgical. It moves responsibility back where it belongs. A young man in line whispers to his friend that this has to be staged. The friend shakes his head without looking away. "Watch her," he says. "People faking it talk too much." The manager finally instructs security to call upstairs, but he dials as well, thumb stabbing the speed dial for compliance. He keeps his voice pitched low, though microphones are everywhere. "Possible check fraud," he says. "Attempted large withdrawal." The subject is confrontational. The last word falls flat even as he says it, because she is not. She is simply waiting. On speaker at the counter, the regional office picks up. A receptionist routes the call. The line clicks and the regional director comes on, voice steady and unsurprised. "State the account number." "State the amount." "State the name of the client." The manager does. There is a beat that tastes like metal. "Approve the transaction," the director says. "That client is the principal owner of this branch's parent company. Treat her accordingly." The teller covers the microphone and exhales the first sound of relief since this began. Security lowers his hand from the radio and nods. The manager stands still. The crowd has gone from hungry to quiet, a new kind of alertness replacing the sensation of being entertained. The woman gathers the documents but does not rush. She waits for the teller to regain control of the process. The teller straightens, finds the workflow, and begins entering the authorization codes that only appear for high-level approvals. The printer warms, paper slides into the tray, the manager clears his throat and arranges his face into something like professionalism, but the performance now reads as afterthought. Before the receipt prints, the woman turns slightly, so her voice addresses the counter, the guard, and the audience that will exist when these videos are shared. "You have policies for risk," she says. "Good. Have policies for respect, too. You can follow both." No anger in her tone, no lecture, just the outline of a standard that could exist if anyone wanted it to. The receipt emerges. The teller counts the bills and binds them in clean stacks, then pauses and looks up. "Thank you for your patience, ma'am." The words are simple and real. She nods once, accepts the case that will carry what she came for, and leaves the portfolio closed. The evidence is no longer needed. The manager watches her sign the final acknowledgement. He does not apologize. Perhaps he thinks silence hides liability. Perhaps he has not yet recognized what this scene will look like from the outside. The crowd begins to disperse. 100 private verdicts walking out into daylight. Security holds the door as she steps through. For a second, natural light fills the branch, plain and undeniable. Then the door swings shut, and the bank is itself again, deciding how it wants to be remembered. Outside, the air feels warmer. She crosses the plaza with an unhurried step, the case in one hand, the other hand free. A ride idles at the curb. She does not get in yet. She looks back once through the branch's glass, not to gloat, but to confirm the procedure has resumed without her. Inside, the teller is finishing a note in the system. The manager has retreated to his desk and is staring at a blank email as if it were a cliff. Across the lobby, the security guard stands at parade rest and exhales for the first time in minutes. He replays the sequence in his head, counting the choices. He had hovered, not blocked. He had spoken once, offering a path that kept everyone safe. He touches the radio, half expecting a call from upstairs. Instead, his phone buzzes with a message from a friend who somehow already saw a clip. "Dude, that was you in the frame," the text reads. He pockets the phone and looks over at the teller. "You good?" he asks. The teller nods, and that small confirmation settles him. At the manager's station, compliance calls back. The voice is technical and brisk. "We will need your incident notes within the hour. Attach copies of any checks, screen logs, and document the refusal rationale you believed applied." The manager types that phrase and pauses on "believed," his first hint that the write-up is not going to read like a defense. Another call pings. HR asks for time on his calendar. He says yes, without asking why. By the doors, 2 bystanders compare short videos. One used captions, one captured the line approving the withdrawal. Neither needs commentary. Comments will supply themselves strangers, layering context and assumption across a moment that began as a transaction. The boy with the scooter tells his mother later that the quiet woman said the thing you only hear in movies and then made it true. At the curb, the woman answers a call from her chief of staff. "All set," she says. "We will need to follow up with the regional director. I will write, but draft the memo from operations. Keep it procedural, no adjectives." The chief of staff agrees and mentions that the board chat has woken up. Someone clipped the reveal. A director texted that the line was perfect. She does not smile. "It was not perfect," she says. "It was necessary." She steps into the car, sets the case beside her, and opens her email. A brief note forms, "Thank you for the rapid verification." She copies the director, the compliance lead, and the branch manager. Underneath, she adds a single sentence about aligning respect with risk controls, followed by a request for a short training module that can be shared to every branch. Please include specific steps for verifying identity without performance. She sends it before the light turns green. Inside, the manager finishes the incident report and stares at the cursor. He adds that the lobby was crowded, that he felt responsible for preventing loss, that he relied on prior examples where counterfeit checks were presented. He leaves out that he enjoyed being watched. When the regional director walks in unannounced, he stands, trying to look composed. The director does not raise her voice. She asks for a few minutes in a side office. The conversation is quiet and durable. It contains dates, policies, and the word again only once, attached to a meeting about bias training he had missed 2 months prior. The teller, still at the window, processes the account notes that have now appeared from headquarters. Owner verification completed. Transaction approved. The teller adds a final sentence of their own. The client remained calm and requested internal verification. Tone respectful. They do not know anyone will ever read that line, but it feels important to place the truth somewhere official. The security guard steps outside for a minute and scans the street. The woman's car is gone. He looks at the branch sign and wonders how many decisions are made for the room rather than for the record. He decides he will keep doing the small things that nudge people toward the right call. The neutral suggestion, the steady posture, the reminder that procedure can include decency. In the car, the woman leans back and closes her eyes long enough to wipe the scene from the inside of her eyelids. Then she opens a shared document titled Making Policy Visible. She types a list of 3 steps in plain language. Ask, verify, respect. Under each, a single sentence that a teller can follow under pressure. When the car turns onto the expressway, the document autosaves. The bank is still behind her, but the work arrives everywhere at once. By late afternoon, the story detours from the lobby into feeds and inboxes. A 3-second clip surfaces first, the moment where the manager's voice fills the room and the woman's reply lands with surgical calm. It spreads because brevity is an accelerant. Captions multiply, some trim it to a single sentence with a credit line, others stitch it into compilations of public confrontations that end with a turn no one planned for. Each version pushes the same gravity toward the bank's logo above the counter. At headquarters, a communications lead watches the trend line tilt upward. They open a crisis template and begin replacing placeholders with facts. They avoid adjectives, just as the woman asked. Statement timing is debated. Half the team argues for speed to calm speculation. The other half warns that speed without action reads as noise. The decision lands in the middle. A short acknowledgement will go out, paired with immediate steps and names attached to those steps. Responsibility should never be faceless. The regional director drafts an internal memo. It cites policy numbers and adds a line so plain it reads like a rule of physics. If identity can be verified quickly, dignity cannot be delayed. Training will be updated this week. Each branch will run a scenario that forces the choice between performance and process. The memo avoids shaming, but it draws a bright line where discretion ends. In a separate thread, operations move on the woman's request. A skeleton of the new module forms around 3 verbs. Ask is defined as a checklist rather than a mood. Verifies map to tools that already exist, but are often underused. Respect becomes 3 observable behaviors that can be taught and measured. The designers ban euphemism. They replace every instance of customer with client to remind staff the relationship is professional, not parental. The manager remains at his desk as the sun slides across the carpet. He is still in uniform, still wearing the day-like armor that no longer fits. HR's calendar invite has expanded into a packet of documents. Some are reflective exercises, some are dates and obligations. One page references an older complaint about tone that never made it past an awkward conversation. He signs receipt of the packet and asks whether he should go home. Not yet, he is told. There will be a meeting at 5. The teller leaves for a short break and sits on a bench in the small plaza. Their hands finally stop shaking. The security guard joins them a respectful distance away and offers water. They talk softly about the silence that followed the woman's last line, how it made the room feel like a courtroom with no judge, only a mirror. Neither of them mentions the manager by name. They talk about the relief of a process that clicked into place the moment someone insisted on it. Across the city, the woman steps into a quiet conference room at her office. The window looks over a river that moves with none of the day's drama. Her chief of staff has pulled together a 2-page draft of the training note, plus a short preface from her as owner. She edits without flourishing. She removes any sentence that sounds like triumph. She adds a reminder that policy is there to protect the bank and the client at the same time, and that suspicion is not a strategy. Before sending, she calls the regional director to thank her for directness. They agree on 2 follow-ups, a listening session with frontline staff, and a simple dashboard that tracks verification times next to satisfaction notes. An email arrives from a journalist requesting comment. Communications has prepared a line for her, but she writes her own, lighter and more practical. She says the branch corrected itself and that she expects the institution to keep doing so without the presence of a camera. She declines an on-camera interview. The goal is not a spotlight, she tells her team. The goal is a standard everyone can stand on. By evening, the first copies of the training module arrive in branch inboxes with a note from operations and a 1-minute screen recording showing how to access the verification directory in 3 steps. No drama, no montage, just the work, lucid and repeatable. The teller watches it once and thinks of the moment their hands hovered, then moved. The guard forwards it to 2 younger colleagues with a sentence he never thought to type in this job. This is good. At 5, the manager sits in a small room with glass walls. HR and the regional director are present. The conversation is patient and precise. They talk about procedure, judgment, and the difference between confidence and certainty. He answers, sometimes with clarity, sometimes with the fog of a person hearing his own habits named. When the meeting ends, he knows his next weeks will not be on the branch floor. He signs a form. He acknowledges the plan. He walks back through the lobby slower than he arrived that morning, noticing for the first time how clearly the glass reflects whoever stands in front of it. Morning returns the branch to its rituals, but the air carries a new kind of attention. Posters about fraud prevention still sit by the entrance, yet beside them, a small sign has appeared directing clients to a privacy desk for any verification beyond the standard. The teller arrives early, opens their station, and rehearses the 3-step directory path once before the doors unlock. The security guard walks the floor, checking lines of sight and the small details that create calm. When the first clients file in, the room feels steadier, less performative, as if everyone has remembered that a bank is a place for quiet decisions. At headquarters, the listening session begins in a room with simple chairs and a wide screen. Frontline staff from several branches joined by video, the regional director sets the tone. We are here to talk about what happens before and after a decision, she says. Not to defend, not to blame, but to fix friction we built ourselves. The woman joins for the first 10 minutes, camera on, light behind her even. She thanks them for doing work that is judged in seconds and remembered for months. Then she repeats the line she had written the night before. If identity can be verified quickly, dignity cannot be delayed. She signs off so the conversation can breathe. Stories arrive. A teller describes a past Saturday when the line curled around the lobby and a similar doubt spiraled because no one wanted to be the person who said yes. A branch lead admits he sometimes speaks louder when he feels unsure, as if a firm tone could stand in for a clear process. The security guard from the incident talks about posture and how people take their cues from the first calm face they see. Someone from compliance offers a small correction that feels large. If you can call it suspicion, you can log it. If you cannot log it, what you have is discomfort. Discomfort is a signal for verification, not performance. The manager attends from a side office. He listens with arms folded, then slowly lowers them. When asked to speak, he does not narrate the incident. He describes the moment he felt the lobby watching him and how quickly the need to be right replaced the need to be correct. He says the word again with care and attaches it to the meeting on bias he skipped. He does not ask to be absolved. He asks for a practice drill he can run until his mouth stops moving faster than his judgment. The room hears sincerity more than contrition. Which is better? Meanwhile, the clip continues to travel. Most posts are simple mirrors of the moment. A few bend the story toward easy outrage. Communications replies to one reporter with the training module link and a sentence that names the lesson without naming the manager. The point is not one person, the note says. The point is making the quiet path the obvious one. A columnist writes that organizations always reveal themselves at low speed, not high. The line sticks because it matches what people saw. By midday, the branch settles into a new rhythm. A client arrives with a business withdrawal that would once have triggered friction. The teller asks, verifies, respects. The extra step adds 60 seconds and removes an hour of tension that never has to happen. The client leaves with the same calm they arrived with. No phones rise, no voices spike. The guard watches the exchange and logs nothing because there is nothing to log. In the afternoon, the woman visits a different branch, unannounced. Not to test anyone, but to feel the system she insists on. She waits her turn, shares a brief with a junior banker, and asks 2 questions she expects customers to ask more often. How do you verify me quickly if something looks off? How do you make sure the fix is quiet? The banker answers without script and shows the screen path. The answers are ordinary and therefore perfect. When the day ends, the regional director sends a short note to the network. First results from the module show verification times decreasing as confidence increases. The teller reads the message on their phone before locking the drawer. The manager reads it too, from the training room where he is running through scenarios with another supervisor. In one drill, he chooses patience and finds the process meeting him halfway. He smiles once, small and private, because the room is empty and no one needs to see it. The city lights take their places. In a quiet office, the woman closes a laptop and leaves a single lamp on. The clip may still move, but the work has shifted to forms and habits and the subtle choreography of a lobby that never appears on a screen. She thinks of the line everyone keeps quoting and hopes it will be unnecessary soon, not because it is wrong, but because the system will say it for her without her being there. A week later, the branch opens to a soft rain and a steadier pulse. The teller has stopped rehearsing the directory path out loud. Their hands know it now, muscle memory built from repetition and the relief of a clean process. A woman in a navy coat steps up with a wire transfer and a question about a limit. The answer takes less time than it does to peel the backing off a new roll of tape. Ask, verify, respect. The sequence moves like a three-note melody the staff can hum without thinking. The security guard stands near the entrance and notices how people read rooms before they read signs. He keeps his shoulders relaxed and his eyes level with faces rather than with pockets or bags. A man at the end of the line looks tense until the guard nods to him in a way that says, "You are not an interruption." The line loosens. Small gestures do not trend, but they hold the roof up. Upstairs, a glass-walled training room has become the manager's second address. He stands at a terminal with a supervisor and runs the scenario that beat him last week. A clip plays without sound. He watches himself grip the checks too tightly. He watches the moment the lobby becomes an audience. The supervisor pauses the frame and asks what signal he missed. He answers, without dramatics, "I mistook my discomfort for risk." They rebuild the scene on a whiteboard until the steps look like a ladder he can climb every time. He does the exercise again, lips moving as he narrates the quiet version. When he reaches the decision point, he picks up the phone in a measured arc, dials the directory, and waits. The room stays small and manageable. He does it again, and again. At headquarters, Operations publishes the first dashboard that pairs verification time with a short note from each transaction where extra checks were triggered. The numbers are not sensational. Most measures are in minutes. The notes are better than numbers. Confirmed ID through directory. The client thanked me for my patience. Verified with the regional office in under 3 minutes. No elevated tone. The communications lead prints a single page of these lines for the board meeting and places it next to the profit and loss sheet. It reads like proof of concept from a different discipline. The woman spends the morning on a call with community leaders who watch the clip and worried that quiet fixes might bury public problems. She listens, no interruptions, and outlines what will be made visible. The training module is published to staff. The dashboard goes to branch leads and is summarized quarterly for clients. A listening session will be open to 3 outside observers each month. Then she asks for something back. When you see improvement, name it. If the only stories that travel are failures, the incentive landscape stays warped. The call ends with a calendar invite and a sense that the work is moving in both directions. Midday, a delivery arrives at the branch. Laminated cards for tellers and managers with a simple flow on one side and phrases on the other that keep rooms from overheating. We can verify that quickly for you. Thank you for your patience while I check internally. I want to get this right, not just fast. The teller slips one card under their keyboard and laughs at how obvious the wording feels now that they have lived through its absence. An older client walks in carrying a folder full of savings bonds. The manager meets him halfway, not to intercept, but to help hold the stack while the client rearranges his grip. He asks a question in a tone that is both respectful and exact. "Are you comfortable if I verify the redemption details through our internal system while you sit at the privacy desk?" The client looks at the small sign pointing to the desk and nods like someone who has been waiting years for this friction to be named. Later, the security guard runs a short drill for 2 new hires. He has no slides and no script. He shows them where to stand to be seen, but not felt as a threat. He demonstrates what a pause looks like when it is a safety choice rather than a show. He tells them the most helpful words he used last week were not commands, but suggestions pointed at the right person at the right time. The new hires take notes in a handwriting that looks like their first day of school. The guard pockets his own card with the 3 verbs and thinks how strange it is that the job finally feels like security rather than surveillance. In the afternoon, the woman takes a call from a director who insists on reputational calculus. She lets him finish the math, then describes a different equation. The cost of the clip is finite. The value of a repeatable correction is compound interest. He is quiet long enough to concede the metaphor. She asks him to visit a branch next week and sit at a window while a teller walks him through the directory. "You cannot govern what you refuse to touch," she says. He agrees, surprising both of them. The day closes without any phones lifted for spectacle. Receipts print, doors open and close. A janitor wipes a fingerprint from the glass at the counter and leaves one clean pane that reflects whoever stands there next. In the training room, the manager packs his notes, looks at the whiteboard ladder, and realizes his voice stayed inside a normal range all day. He shuts off the lights and waits a beat in the dim as if to test whether silence can feel like achievement. It can. When the woman reaches home, she places the case from last week on a shelf and leaves it closed. She makes tea and reads the dashboard summary on a tablet. The lines are plain and quiet. The absence of drama feels like a promise kept. She writes a short message to the network before bed. "Thank you for doing ordinary work well. It is the opposite of a headline and exactly what the institution needs." By the second week, the clip has cooled and the habit has warmed. The branch moves like a film scored at a lower volume. Morning light falls through the glass and lands on a counter that is only a counter again. The teller unlocks their drawer and feels how memory has turned into a method. They no longer brace for the moment a voice will try to dominate the room. They brace for the right step, which is to ask and then verify. That shift changes the way their shoulders sit above the keyboard. A delivery truck idles outside while a maintenance tech replaces a flickering ballast. The sound is ordinary and steady. Through the doors comes a client who has not been here before. A woman in travel clothes with a backpack and a cashier's check made out to her small company. She explains that a partner asked her to deposit and clear it today so payroll will not slip. The amount would have made the old version of this lobby tighten. The teller listens, confirms the account, and names the steps. "We will run our directory verification, call the issuing bank, and keep you at the privacy desk while we do it. You will not have to narrate your case to the room." Her shoulders drop a half inch in relief. The manager appears, not to perform, but to assist. He reviews the signature card and cross-checks the holding company profile the way his whiteboard ladder dictates. He keeps his voice at conversational level even when the issuing bank puts him on hold. He could stare at the line of waiting clients and feel heat rise. Instead, he waves another associate to open a temporary station and returns to the person in front of him. When the issuing bank confirms, he does not claim credit. He thanks the client for letting them do it right. Across town, the woman sits in a conference room with operations and a few branch leads. "Today is about the second half of the flow," she says. "The part after the verification is complete, where grace either lands or drifts away." They look at notes from the new dashboard. Times are down. Complaints are down. The remaining friction sits in tone and handoff. They decide to pilot a simple script that replaces "sorry for the delay" with "thank you for your patience while we verified your account." The words are nearly the same length, but one treats time as a failure, and the other treats accuracy as service. Midday brings a test of the new reflex without warning. A man walks in carrying a stack of third-party checks for a church fundraiser. He speaks quickly and seems anxious. The teller senses the room tightening and refuses to let it. They guide him to the privacy desk and explain the process with clarity and respect. The manager joins, names the verification steps, and calls the issuing institution while the security guard stands where he can be seen by the line, not looming, just present. The call takes 4 minutes. The checks are clear. The man thanks them and leaves in a sigh. No phones rise, no voices spike. The clip that might have been is replaced by a transaction that never asks to be watched. In a small office, the manager records a short video log for his team. He does not mention the viral moment. He talks about the day he noticed his palms were not damp by noon. He describes the difference between sounding firm and being steady. He says that if he had understood earlier that dignity can be measured, he would have asked for a dashboard sooner. He ends the log with a note about practice. Doing the right thing once is a story. Doing it all week becomes posture. Late afternoon, the security guard runs a 15-minute walkthrough with the new hires again. He shows them how to read the cue. He points to the spot where a person sometimes freezes because a stranger is watching. He tells them the scene you save is the one that never starts. He does not mention policy, he shows it. He adjusts a stanchion so the line angles toward the privacy desk as if the room itself has learned a better route. The woman ends her day at a different branch where a lobby manager has put up a single new sign on the glass near the teller windows. It does not list rules, it lists a promise. We verify quickly and quietly. Ask us how. She stands back and watches 3 clients glance at the sign and then at the staff. The direction of trust in the room tilts by a degree that would not register on a chart, but that a person can feel. In the evening, she accepts one media request, a podcast with a calm host and no appetite for spectacle. She talks about the architecture of a good apology and the difference between apology and repair. She tells the story from the inside out, not as a blow-by-blow, but as a model for building a corridor through doubt. The host asks if she expected the line to travel. She says she did not. She expected the process to travel and is glad it has. Night falls. The branch empties and the maintenance tech finishes with the lights. The manager locks the side door and stands for a moment in the dim. He listens to the absence of tension and feels a new habit settling where old reflexes used to live. The teller writes one last note into the system about an interaction that went right and adds a quiet line about tone respectful. The guard steps into the cool air, pockets his laminated card, and thinks about how security and respect are not separate tasks any longer. In apartments and on trains, a few people who were there that first day remember the silence after the sentence and how it reset the room. Now they think about how the room stays that quiet without needing a sentence at all. The month turns, and with it the focus of the story. What began as a public clip is now infrastructure. At headquarters, a quarterly review gathers in a long room with a modest table and a wall display showing the verification dashboard. Lines hover close to the baseline. The operations lead to a cluster of notes from branches that had struggled last year and now sit in the middle of the pack. The regional director highlights one more row that matters as much as any number. Compliments recorded. It is not a vanity metric. It marks when a client noticed the process did its work without fanfare. Across town, the woman meets a small group of community bankers and credit union managers who ask the same question in different tones. How did you get your people to stop performing and start verifying? She talks about incentives and tools, not slogans. She describes the 3-step flow as muscle memory that only forms if the institution removes obstacles and narrates the behavior it wants. She invites them to watch a branch for an hour and pay attention to what happens in the minute after a decision when dignity either lands or leaks away. They nod and take that phrase home. At the branch, a different test arrives. A client wearing a delivery uniform brings in a certified check that is perfectly legitimate but triggers a hold because of a mismatch in a printed code. In the old days, the scene would have sharpened. Today, the teller guides the client to the privacy desk and explains what the system saw and how they will clear it. The manager calls the issuing bank and the security guard takes a position where the queue can see him and know the matter is contained. 4 minutes later, the code issue was resolved. The client leaves with a simple thank you and a note that the process felt respectful. The teller adds that sentence to the log and it becomes another point on the quiet graph. The manager continues his practice in the small training room. He runs a drill where no one is watching and a drill where 5 associates pretend to be a restless line. He narrates the steps and hears his voice stay level. The supervisor pauses the session and asks what he will do when a future decision invites the old habit back. He answers with the words he wrote on the whiteboard the night he stopped bracing for an audience. Ask to verify respect. He writes them again, slowly, as if to lay down grooves. The woman visits a branch in a different neighborhood and takes a seat in the lobby rather than walking behind the counter. She watches a junior banker handle a tough conversation with a client who has a complex account structure and a deadline. The banker explains the internal directory, shows the screen, and keeps the client informed during the short hold. When the approval arrives, the banker says the line operations are drafted. Thank you for your patience while we verified your account. The client smiles because the sentence names what happened rather than pretending nothing took time. Later that day, the communications team shares a short internal article that compares 2 recordings. One is the viral clip trimmed to the moment of the reveal. The second is a mundane exchange from last week that was resolved in under 3 minutes without any raised voices. The article argues for celebrating the second. It suggests a practice of catching quiet wins and writing a line or two about why they worked. Staff start sending those notes to a shared inbox that requires no permission and offers no points, only a place for examples to accumulate. Evening brings a board session. Some directors still push for guarantees that a similar incident could never happen again. The woman refuses that promise and offers another. When it tries to happen again, the process will move faster than the performance. She shows the dashboard and a handful of staff notes. The board sees that calm can be measured and that measurement changes behavior. A director who had worried about reputation looks less concerned. He admits he visited a branch and sat quietly while a teller walked him through the directory. He says the experience felt like a system choosing to be decent rather than dramatic. Night settles. The branch closes. The security guard walks the floor and pauses at the privacy desk where so many small storms now dissolve before they reach the room. He thinks about the idea from the listening session that discomfort is a signal for verification, not a cue to raise the temperature. He pockets the laminated card and locks the doors. Out on the sidewalk, the city moves at its usual speed. Inside the glass, the counters sit clean and unremarkable, ready for another day where the best scene is the one that never needs a camera. The first true stress test arrives on a Friday at noon. The branch is full, the queue curves once, and the hum of conversation is exactly the kind of background sound that keeps nerves steady. Then the internal directory blinks and freezes. A progress wheel spins and refuses to resolve. The teller tries again, same result. Across 3 terminals, the verification tool times out. The old version of this room would have stiffened and looked for a voice to fill the gap. The new version falls back on the plan they practiced when someone asked what to do if the tools fail. The teller looks up at the client, a small business owner with a courier bag and a deadline. They narrate what is happening in clean language. Our system is experiencing a temporary delay. We can verify your account through a secondary method and a phone line that bypasses the app. Thank you for your patience while we do that. The client nods, relieved that the delay has a name and a path. The teller signals the lobby manager, who sets a small placard on the counter that reads, "We are verifying via phone today," and opens one more station so the line keeps moving. The manager steps into the privacy desk with the client and opens a binder that has sat on the shelf since the new module shipped. Inside are instructions for the manual path, numbers for the regional office and for issuing institutions, and a short script for setting expectations without turning the process into a show. He dials and places the call on the desk speaker so that both sides can hear the method without raising voices. The security guard shifts a stanchion to create space around the desk and stands where everyone can see that the matter is contained. He is not guarding the client. He is guarding the conditions that allow the process to continue quietly. The regional office answers and confirms that the directory is down across 3 branches. They authorize manual verification and provide a reference code. The manager reads account details, confirms identifiers, and receives the approval. The client signs, thanks him, and returns to the lobby. The entire exchange takes 6 minutes. In the queue, people notice the clarity more than the delay. The teller resumes the next transaction with the same sentence they practiced. Thank you for your patience while we verify your account. 2 more clients arrive with edge cases. One is an out-of-state contractor with 2 forms of ID and a check from a municipal project. The other is a nonprofit treasurer depositing a batch that includes 1 item flagged by a faint mismatch in a printed code. Both cases would have triggered anxiety in the old days. Today, the team follows the binder, not their nerves. The manager keeps his voice at the same level he uses when asking for paper for the printer. The teller narrates each step in a calm, present tense. The guard answers a quiet question from a person in line who wants to know if they will miss a meeting. "You will be seen," he says. "If your transaction needs the phone method, it takes a few minutes." The person nods and stays. At headquarters, operations sees the outage alert and sends a 1-line update to branch leads. Manual path authorized for directory downtime. Note verification time in the log. The message arrives in the minutes after the branch has already begun. The habit is ahead of the email. When the directory returns 30 minutes later, the staff slips back to the faster route without announcing victory. The manager writes a brief log while the details are fresh. Manual path used for 3 transactions. The average time is 5 minutes. Clientreactions.com. No raised voices. He adds a sentence about the placard and the extra station. It reads like a small recipe for avoiding heat. The woman spends that hour in a conference room with operations and does not hear about the outage until later. When she reads the log, she sees the value of drills and binders and the small placard that says the same thing to everyone. She sends a short note to the branch leads. "Thank you for using the manual path without performance. Please upload any adjustments you made on the fly, especially language that worked at the counter." She keeps the message plain. Praise is useful when it is specific. In the afternoon, a regular arrives with a problem that is not technical but human. He has been declined before at another institution and carries that memory like a bruise. He starts with his shoulders high and his voice fast. The teller recognizes the signs and does not respond with speed. They ask 3 clear questions and reflect back the answers. Then they verify with the directory, which is now stable, and keep the client at the privacy desk until the last step is complete. When it clears, the teller uses the exact sentence from the module and looks the client in the eye. "Thank you for your patience while we verified your account." The man exhales and says he had expected to be performed at. He leaves with a receipt and a posture an inch lower than when he walked in. Late in the day, the regional director walks the floor with a small notebook. She is not checking for faults. She is collecting sentences that travel well. She hears the guard tell a waiting client, "We will keep you informed every step, not every minute," and writes it down. She hears a junior banker explain the difference between suspicion and discomfort in a way that would make sense to a cousin over dinner. She writes that down too. She asks the manager what he felt when the directory froze. He does not mention fear or embarrassment. He says he felt the binder behind him and the card under the teller's keyboard. He felt the room trust the process more than his voice. Before closing, the teller updates the log with 2 short lines. The manual path worked as documented. Clients responded to clarity. The manager sends a photo of the placard to operations with a suggestion to include it in every branch kit. The guard stores the stanchion plan in his head where he keeps the map of how to keep a room from turning into an audience. The woman reads the notes and forwards them to the board with a subject line that is not dramatic. "Outage handled with calm and procedure." Night arrives. The lobby empties. The team cleans the counter glass and resets the privacy desk. The directory will work tomorrow or it will not. Either way, the steps exist, the sentences exist, and the people who use them know how to carry a room towards steadiness. The story that began as a twist now reads like craft. The best proof is that nothing asked to be filmed. Monday brings an external audit and a quiet kind of pressure. 2 examiners arrive with laptops and a checklist that looks ordinary until you notice how the questions trace the exact path of the incident from a month ago. They sit with the branch team at a side table just beyond the lobby, close enough to hear the rhythm of the room while they work. The manager sets water on the table and does not over-explain. The teller pulls system logs, the security guard offers floor plans, and a short note about how the privacy desk is used when transactions need more than a glance. The first hour is simple verification. Show the directory, show the manual binder, show a sample of logs where tone was noted. The teller opens a dozen entries from different days and reads the same closing sentence out loud. The client remained informed during verification, tone respectful, the words are not performative anymore. They have a habit of trying to document itself. One examiner asks to shadow 3 transactions from start to finish. They choose at random. A business deposit that includes 1 item over a threshold. A personal withdrawal that triggers an ID check because of a middle name mismatch. A wire request with a new beneficiary. The steps look the same in each case. Ask, verify, respect. The examiner notes how the teller narrates calmly during the short hold without turning the room into a stage. He leans toward the privacy desk once as if to test whether the setup creates genuine separation. It does. The manager keeps his voice even throughout. When the approvals appear, the staff does not rush to erase the delay. They acknowledge the check, thank the client, and close the loop. Mid-morning, the woman joins the video for a brief conversation. The examiners ask how the training module was designed and whether it includes real decisions or only scripted scenarios. Real decisions, she says. We captured the split second when discomfort tries to call itself risk and we put a ladder there. They ask how the institution will keep the ladder from turning back into a slogan. She points to the dashboard that pairs verification time with the 1-line staff note. Measurement changes behavior, she says. but listening changes tone. That is why the memo from the regional director includes the line about dignity and why we protect time for staff to practice it. A small test comes without announcement. A client arrives agitated, complaining about a hold at another bank that never made sense to him. He expects the same here and tries to set the room on a path toward confrontation. The teller keeps the voice low, repeats the path in simple language, and guides him to the privacy desk before the posture hardens. The security guard stands where the line can see him and where the client can see that space has been made for a quiet process. The manager uses the directory first, then the manual phone for a cross-check, narrating without bravado. In less than 5 minutes, the account clears and the client nods. He does not apologize. He does not need to. He leaves at the same volume he arrived, which in this room qualifies as success. The examiners take notes. They ask for the binder to photograph a page for their report. They request the laminated card language that sits under the keyboards. They ask 2 associates privately whether they feel they can slow a decision without being criticized for time. Both say yes. One adds that the phrase, "we verify quickly and quietly," has become a shared promise, not just a sign. At lunch, the manager joins the teller at the break table. He says he is grateful the questions felt like coaching rather than a trap. The teller says the difference is that they had answers they could show, not just defend. The guard sits with them and mentions the first day he heard the sentence everyone remembers. He says he thinks less now about that moment and more about the morning he noticed his shoulders stay level during a tense line. None of them say, "we fixed it." They say, "we are fixing it each day." In the afternoon, a small translation project lands. Operations sends a draft of the privacy desk sign in 3 additional languages based on neighborhood data. The teller offers a precise correction to one phrase, so it reads as an invitation rather than a rule. The manager approves the print run and schedules placement. The guard walks the lobby and chooses spots where the signs will be seen without crowding anyone. He moves one stanchion 2 feet to carve a path that makes sense whether the room is busy or quiet. The woman ends her day with a brief call to the regional director. They discuss the audit tone, the dashboard, and the next steps. The director suggests expanding the listening sessions to include clients who have had a transaction verified manually and were willing to talk about the experience. Make it optional and brief, the woman says. 2 questions. Did you feel informed? Did you feel respected? Keep the answers in a shared folder. No names unless people offer them. Before closing, the examiners meet with the branch team and deliver a preliminary readout. Controls are present and functioning. Staff demonstrates consistent use of verification tools. Tone and process aligned in observed cases. They mention the outage last week and how the manual path was used without raising volume. They request one small improvement: a clearer timestamp on manual verifications so reports line up more cleanly. The manager writes the note and promises to push the change request that afternoon. Evening comes without the sense that anyone performed for a camera. The lobby empties at a human pace. Receipts stack in quiet piles. The teller closes the drawer and adds one more line to the log, not for the auditors, but for the person who might read it later and need proof that craft is a thing you can practice. Verification consistent, clients informed. The room stayed calm. The guard locks the doors and checks the privacy desk once more, as if respecting the tool that keeps rooms from turning into shows. The manager shuts off the training room lights and pauses by the whiteboard ladder long enough to know he will not need to trace it tomorrow, even though he could. The audit fades into paperwork, and the branch returns to a rhythm that feels earned. By midweek, operations pushes a software update that adds a small banner above the directory. Verification in progress with a live timer that only staff can see. It is not for performance, it is for pacing. The teller notices how the timer settles them. 30 seconds is no longer a void to fill with chatter. It is a frame to work within. The manager appreciates that the log now stamps manual calls to the regional office to the second, clean lines for reports instead of memories. A new client arrives just after lunch, a contractor whose license was recently renewed under a slightly different name format. The old system would have spun this into uncertainty. Today, the teller touches the privacy desk placard, invites him to sit, and opens the updated directory path. The manager cross-references the licensing database through the authorized link, narrating each step with the same cadence he now uses for counting out currency. The approval lands, and the teller closes the loop with the sentence that has become a promise. "Thank you for your patience while we verified your account." The man nods, surprised not by the approval but by the absence of theater. The security guard has started keeping a small pocket notebook, not to record incidents, but to track arrangements that keep rooms calm. He sketches the lobby with arrows showing how a line curves when the door is propped open, how sound changes when a stanchion sits 2 feet deeper into the space. He notices that when the privacy desk chair is angled 10 degrees toward the counter, clients lean forward instead of over their shoulder. He shares the drawing with 2 new hires and calls it the invisible map. Late afternoon brings an unusual visitor, an assistant district attorney who wants to understand the verification flow from the institution's side because of a case in another part of the city. The woman joins by video for 5 minutes, not to claim credit, but to make sure the explanation stays practical. She outlines the 3 verbs in the binder, then hands the line to the teller, who walks the ADA through a real example with identifying details removed. The ADA asks, what happens when law enforcement pressure collides with the need to keep the room from becoming a stage? The manager explains the script that moves the conversation to a private space and the requirement to log any external direction, including the exact language used. The ADA writes down the phrase, "Discomfort is a signal for verification, not a cue to raise the temperature," and says she will borrow it for her own staff. That evening, the regional director hosts the first client listening session with 3 volunteers who had their transactions manually verified the prior week. It is short by design. 2 questions, a glass of water, and no cameras. Did you feel informed? Did you feel respected? A retiree says he felt both, and that the calm narration made him less aware of the people in line behind him. A nonprofit treasurer says she appreciated not being asked to perform needs. A contractor says the phrase privacy desk sounded like protection instead of interrogation. The director writes the exact words as they are spoken. Later, she emails the quotes to the branch leads unedited. The manager ends his day in the training room with a small group of associates who ask for an extra drill. He runs the clip of his worst moment once, without sound, then freezes the frame and writes a question on the board. What would have kept this from happening if none of us had changed? The group answers. A directory link on the teller's home screen, a placard that names the manual path, a layout that favors quiet over spectacle. He circles each item and says the quiet part out loud. People change slower than rooms. We adjusted the room. Now we're catching up. Across town, the woman stands at a whiteboard with operations sketching the next version of the directory. She asks for 2 additions. A client-facing summary that staff can print with 1 click when a manual path is used, 2 sentences that explain what happened and why, and a silent alert that pings the regional office if a verification call passes the 4-minute mark, not to escalate, but to offer help. She adds a small note in the corner of the board, "Do not gamify." The point is steadiness, not speed contests. Thursday brings a test that could have turned theatrical. A social media streamer walks in with a portable camera and the kind of running commentary that feeds on friction. He announces to his audience that he is here to see if the bank plays games. The teller keeps their eyes on the client's needs, not the lens. "We'll handle your transaction at the privacy desk," they say, equal parts invitation and boundary. The manager appears not to debate public recording, but to move the verification to a space that does not drag the room into a show. The guard stands where the stream can see him and where the line understands the bank will not hold the lobby hostage to content. The transaction proceeds at a normal pace. The streamer tries 2 prods. The staff does not nibble. When the approval arrives, the teller thanks him for his patience and hands him a printed summary of the steps used. The stream has nothing to feed on. He leaves. The chat later calls the video boring. The branch calls it a win. By week's end, the dashboard shows a small but real change. Not just fewer complaints, but more specific compliments. The notes are short and unadorned. The staff explain the steps. I felt seen and not performed at. The security guard kept the space calm. The manager prints a page of these for the break room. He does not highlight his own name. He highlights phrases that describe behavior anyone can adopt. The teller closes out the drawer and writes 1 final line in the log that does not mention the incident at all. Verification is becoming invisible to the room and visible to the record. The woman reads that entry on her tablet and thinks that is what infrastructure feels like, the smooth edge where a problem used to snag. She replies with a sentence that will become part of the next memo. The goal is not to avoid friction, the goal is to bear it quietly and precisely so clients never have to. Night softens the glass. The guard locks the doors and checks the privacy desk, setting the chair at that 10-degree angle he drew earlier. The manager turns off the training room lights, glances once at the whiteboard ladder, and leaves it erased for the first time, not because the lesson is over, but because the habit has taken its place. The branch sits ready for a future that will keep testing it in small ways. That is fine. Small ways are where systems tell the truth. The quarter turns and the story widens beyond one branch. Operations rolls out the updated directory to every location on the network at dawn, along with the client-facing summary the woman had asked for. The summary is 2 sentences, no fluff. We verified your transaction using additional steps. Thank you for your patience while we completed that process. Staff print a stack and place them by the privacy desks. Most will never be used. The option matters because it is proof, not theater. At the flagship branch, the morning rhythm is steady when an unexpected call routes through the manager's line. A detective requests information on a client who is, at that very moment, standing at window 3 asking for a cash withdrawal that trips a large amount review. The old reflex would have been to speak loudly, to involve the room by accident. The manager follows a script that moves pressure to a private space. He invites the detective to a side office, asks for the case number, reads the policy language verbatim, and starts the required internal notifications. He does not turn anyone into an audience. The teller keeps the client at the privacy desk and narrates each step in simple present tense. The security guard stands where both interactions are visible but separate. 10 minutes later, the detective confirms there is no hold or warrant. The detective thanks the manager for the clear process and leaves with a copy of the policy. The client completes the withdrawal and accepts a printed summary of the steps used. No raised voices. 2 complex paths, both quiet. Across town, the woman meets with a group of small business owners at a community center. They ask for the unvarnished version. What changed that wasn't just messaging? She points to the binder and the directory, but spends equal time on the physical layout and the sentence-level work. Rooms lead people, she says. We decided our rooms would lead toward verification instead of performance. She describes the manual placard, the chair angle at the privacy desk, the timer only staff can see. A baker in the front row raises a hand and laughs that she rearranged her storefront last month for flow. The bank, it turns out, did the same thing for fairness. The room nods. Practical beats grand. By mid-afternoon, a branch in a different neighborhood hits a snag of the humankind. A junior associate misreads a middle initial and starts to escalate in his head. Before any sound rises, the teller beside him places a laminated card on the counter and says the line they all use when they feel a wobble. Let's verify this quickly and quietly. The associate breathes, opens the right screen, and the doubt dissolves. Later, he will write a note to himself that the card is not a prop, it is a bridge. The regional director compiles short quotes from client listening sessions into a single page and sends them to every branch with a simple header. Words people actually said. One line lands harder than the rest. I did not have to prove I deserved help. Staff pin the page to corkboards in break rooms. The manager reads it before he runs another practice block for new hires and decides to weave that sentence into the debrief. He wants them to understand that tone is not decoration, it is design. In the late afternoon, the verification timer pings the silent alert at the 4-minute mark on a complicated cross-border wire. The regional office offers help before anyone asks. A specialist joins the call, provides the exact reference language needed, and the approval arrives at 5 minutes, 2 seconds. The teller thanks the client for patience and prints the summary without flourish. The specialist sends a follow-up note proposing a new field in the directory to store that reference for next time. The feedback loop is short enough to feel like a conversation rather than a suggestion box lost in a hallway. As evening approaches, a columnist publishes a piece titled "The Bank That Chose Boring" and means it as praise. The article notes the visible artifacts of change, the privacy desk sign, the placard, the way staff narrate steps without apology. It records that the most striking line of the original clip now appears only on posters in conference rooms as a reminder of what sparked the work. In the closing paragraph, the writer argues that the point was never a slogan. It was a system that behaves as if the slogan is already true, whether or not anyone says it aloud. The woman reads the piece, files it, and returns to a draft of a short internal memo for the next board meeting. She keeps it concrete. Verification times. Compliments recorded. Manual path usage. She adds a final section called "What We Learned When No One Was Watching." The bullets become sentences. Discomfort is a signal for verification, not a cue to raise the temperature. Rooms can be designed to prefer processes. Praise is most useful when it is specific. At closing, the branch looks like a place that did ordinary work well all day. The teller locks the drawer and jots one line in the log about a moment that nearly tilted and didn't. The security guard checks the privacy desk and sets the chair at that 10-degree angle. Now instinct. The manager turns off the training room screen and as the lights settle, remembers the day the lobby was a mirror. It still is, but now it reflects something quieter, a habit that held. The door clicks shut. The system keeps its promise for one more day. A season later, the branch feels like a place that learned how to keep its balance. Morning starts with the soft click of drawers and the quick check of the directory banner. The laminated cards sit where hands can find them without looking. The privacy desk chair rests at its angle, as unremarkable as a door hinge that opens the right way every time. The teller arrives early, prints 3 client summaries for later, and warms up by running 1 mock verification with the timer. The number lands under 2 minutes. It is not a record, it is a baseline. The manager walks the floor before opening, tracing the path a client would take from the door to the counter to the privacy desk and back. He does not narrate anything. He listens to the room's readiness. A year ago, he would have been practicing lines. Now he checks tools and layout and posture. He has a meeting downtown after lunch to present the training module to a group of branch leads who have never met him. He plans to talk about the ladder, the binder, and the moment he realized sounding right is different from being correct. The security guard holds the door for the first client and watches the line settle into a slow sway. He keeps his notebook in his pocket and updates it only when something changes the flow. Today he draws a small diagram of how the queue shifts when 2 windows open at once. It is not art. It is a map of calm. Mid-morning brings a test wrapped in normal life. A teacher on her lunch break needs a cashier's check and a cash withdrawal for a contractor fixing a leak in her classroom ceiling. The amounts collide with a threshold that triggers a second look. The teller invites her to the privacy desk and names the steps. The manager joins, reads the approvals, and uses the timer without glancing at it too often. The call wraps in just over 3 minutes. The teller thanks her for patience and slides across a printed summary. She smiles because the paper turns an invisible process into something she can tuck into a folder beside lesson plans. At noon, the woman visits unannounced. She takes a seat in the lobby and watches 2 transactions from a quiet distance. No one recognizes her at first, which is fine. She does not want the room to bend toward her. She notices the banner, the placard, the chair, the timer, and the way the teller's tone never spikes to fill a pause. When the manager looks up and sees her, he nods once and keeps the process moving. Later, in a side office, she asks what still snags. He mentions only one thing. When a client arrives already angry because of something that happened elsewhere, the first 60 seconds matter more than any script. He explains how they meet that moment with clarity and a place to sit. She writes a single note. The first minute sets the ceiling. After lunch, the manager heads downtown for the presentation. He brings no flashy deck, just the binder, a printed card, and a photo of the placard. He tells the group the story from the inside of the room, not the outside of the clip. He shows the whiteboard ladder he once traced and the sentence he repeats to himself when his voice wants to run ahead of the steps. Ask, verify, respect. He does not mention his worst day until the end, and then only to make the point that rooms can be designed to catch us when we slip. The room stays quiet because the message is practical, not contrite. Back at the branch, the teller trains a new hire. They run 3 scenarios and talk about what to do when the directory stalls, what to say when a person wants the room to watch, How to move a conversation to the privacy desk without making it feel like a corridor to trouble. The new hire asks how to keep nerves from showing in the voice. The teller answers with something learned the hard way. Narrate the next small step. If you can say the step aloud, your tone will follow. Late afternoon, a courier rushes in with a stack of checks close to closing time. The line thickens. The guard adjusts a stanchion and looks at the clock. The teller names expectations for the room without broadcasting details. We will see everyone in line today. If your transaction requires an extra check, we will use the privacy desk so the rest of the room keeps moving. The heat drops out of the air. The manager takes the courier to the desk, opens the binder to the manual page just in case, and completes the set in 5 minutes. The line thins, the door closes on time. Evening brings a short meeting in the break room. The regional director has sent a page of quotes from listening sessions. The staff read them out loud. I felt informed. I did not have to perform need. The phrase privacy desk sounded like protection. They pin the page to the board and stand back. No applause. Just a shared nod that says, this is why the steps matter. Before leaving, the woman walks through the lobby one more time. She does not think of the sentence that once froze a room. She thinks of the tools that now move rooms without drama. She thanks the team and steps into the mild air. In her inbox sits a draft of a memo titled, What Quiet Looks Like When It Holds. She edits one line and adds another. When identity can be verified quickly, dignity cannot be delayed. When identity takes a minute, dignity must stay. She sends it and puts her phone away. Night settles. The teller balances the drawer and writes a final log entry as plain as any other. Verifications completed, clients informed, the room is calm. The guard locks the door, sets the chair to its angle, and pockets his notebook. The manager turns off the lights and pauses in the dark, listening to nothing in particular. The place feels steady. That is the point. The story that once needed a twist ends with a habit that does not.